ministry in a COVID world. My name is Stephanie Gates Sloan, and I want to help you as you think through what does it look like for us to engage new communities with the gospel during this unique time. Part 4 of college ministry in a COVID world is centering around this. How do we engage new communities with the gospel? In part 3, we talked specifically about preparing our people to go. Now, what we're looking at is, okay, how do we go into these new communities? And so the first thing that I think we need to think about is, in the midst of what's happening, needs can look different. And so what are the needs of your community? Are there people who've lost jobs? How can you enter into that space with them? Just like with us on campus, we have new students who are literally only doing online classes, but they're living in the dorms. And so they're more lonely than typical students are. And that's already saying a lot, because the majority of our students in the past, especially over the last 5 years, have struggled with intense loneliness. And so we're thinking through, how do we step into those spaces so that we can help these students get connected? And so when you're entering into a new community, the first thing that is really essential is finding a person of peace. And that's someone who is already a part of that community. So for us, when we wanted to engage athletes, I just started to pray for the Lord to open a door. And he brought some athletes that then said, come into our world. And so you want to find that person that's already a part of the community that says, I want you here, and I'm going to open the door for you. And you might already have that person in the church. And so I want to give you 5 steps of finding a person of peace. So that first step literally is identifying them. So if you're trying to engage college students or a different ministry, maybe it's a specific school. We had the church that I've worked with, they wanted to engage students and faculty at one of the NCTC campuses. And so I knew someone there that would have been a person of peace. We met up, and so they started working together to figure out, how do we do this? And so you want to figure out, if you're wanting to engage college students, do you already have a student in your church? If you're wanting to engage someone else, do you already have someone that's a part of that? If you don't know a person of peace, begin praying that you will find one, that God will provide that person. Also, you want to be praying that the Lord would bring along other people from within your church that will want to partner with you on this ministry. And so you're identifying a person of peace. Step 2, you're praying. And step 3, you want to listen. Once you get around this new community or a person of peace, you want to get to know them. Remember, they're the experts. You're coming in and humbly saying, I need to learn from you. So ask them questions. What are their hopes? What are their struggles? What do they see happening within their friendships and their community? And as you listen and build relationships, you'll start to see that trust begins to develop. And so as you listen, now you're going to do step 4, which is learn. And so don't just assume that your experience was the same as theirs. You want to pay attention to the needs that they share. Pay attention to the things that they're pointing out to you. Let them help you determine how your church and ministry can best engage this new community. Remember, they're your experts. Let them show you the way. Learn from them and walk alongside them. And number 5, you want to meet needs. So now you've got that person of peace. You've been praying for those opportunities to become clear. You've listened to them and you've learned from them. And now you're identifying those needs and what you can do. And so as you're meeting needs and you're building relationships, you're going to find opportunities to share the gospel are going to present themselves. Oftentimes when we want to engage a new community or start something new, our first thought is, we want to start a Bible study, or let's start with a Bible study. You have to remember that that's the end goal. And rarely do we get to start with where we hope to end. And so we don't want to be focusing specifically on, okay, let's get them into our building. Let's get them into this. We want to meet those needs and build those relationships. And as we go to them, we get to know them. And as we meet those needs, we get to establish relationships and build trust. And so once we have that person of peace, here's the next part of the training that I really have found to be helpful. There are 3 key factors that will help you engage this community with the gospel. And those 3 things are proximity, presence, and patience. Proximity, it means to go. So Jesus commands us to go and make disciples. And our tendency is often to wait for new people to come to us. Maybe to come to us with questions, or we throw an event and just expect them to come. But what we see is that first step of discipleship, that first step of making disciples, is actively going to others and engaging them with the gospel. When I think about the word proximity, I think about closeness, being close to others. And I think that definition provides a helpful framework to us going. It's this idea of closeness through location that allows us to build relationships. When I first started doing ministry to athletes, I could not expect them to come to the BSM. Their schedules wouldn't allow it. They're on the other side of campus. And so I had to go to them. And it took 2 years before they trusted me enough to where we could actually start any form of a Bible study. And so, as I said before, Jesus has commanded us to go. And we see this in Matthew 28, where he says, "Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit." Some helpful questions to ask when you're thinking about proximity are, how can you get around people in this new community? What does that look like? Talk to your person of peace. Also, how can you build relationships with them? Let that person of peace be your experts. When I was doing athlete ministry, when I was working with the swimmers, I had to look to Sydney and Ashley and say, I need you to help me figure this out. I need you to introduce me to people. When I started working with the basketball team, it all came down to the coach, opening those doors and introducing me to players. And so that's what proximity means. Now let's talk about presence. Presence means being intentional. So we have to figure out, how do we make the most of every opportunity that we're given? I find it helpful for me first to think about the people who have made an impact on my life. And those are the people who were determined to know me. And not only just to know me, they decided to invest, but most importantly, to invest well. And so when I think about those people, that gives me a picture of what it is I can do. And so I want to encourage you, think about those people. Who are they? And what was it that they did to have their presence in your life? What I'm seeing today on our college students within our campus, and I think this exists within our community, and this comes back down to loneliness and being disconnected. Often, students in particular feel disconnected when they're on a campus of almost 40,000 students. And so we want to let them know that we see you, we remember you. That's what presence is. And when they feel remembered, that changes the ball game. That opens up that trust and that relationship for us to then have the opportunity to go in and to share the gospel. Ephesians 5:15 and 16 says this: "Look carefully how you walk, not as unwise but as wise, making the best use of the time, because the days are evil." So how do we look carefully? That's intentionality. That's making sure that we make the best use of our time that we've been given with our presence. A helpful question to ask is, how can you be intentional with others as you get to know them? This is going to look different based on your people group. And lastly, patience. When I think about patience, I think about love. Love is patient, and building trust takes time. We have to remember that. All relationships take time to develop. You have to keep this in mind as you begin to invest in others. Many people not only struggle to trust others, they struggle most to trust Christians. They've had bad experiences. Maybe their worldview doesn't align. Maybe they've seen some things on social media that makes them think, I don't want anything to do with that. And so that's when proximity and presence provide that opportunity for us as we patiently wait for the Spirit to open up doors for us to share the gospel. So we must be patient and allow time for friendships to form. 1 Corinthians 13:4 says, "Love is patient and kind." When they think about Christians, when they think about the church, do they think about patience? Do they think about love? Do they think about kindness? If the answer is no, you've got to take your time so that they can start to recognize, wait a second, Stephanie's a Christian, and I would define her as patient, loving, and kind. And so we get the opportunity to start to shift the way that they're viewing me as a Christian, and that will provide opportunities not only for me to invest in them, but for me to bring other people in as well. So as I said, our hope is to share the gospel with them, but we have to wait until trust has been established and that opportunity has presented itself. If we go in and the first thing we're doing is handing out flyers and inviting them to our church and saying, here's what we're doing, we really want you to come, they then feel like a number that you just want to come in so you can add it to the equation. But we don't want that. We want them to know that we care about them as people. So patience literally means that we keep showing up. And that's hard today. That's really hard today. I know I'm busy. I work full time. I go to school working on my PhD. I just got married, and I have this ministry that I'm doing with the basketball team. And so when I look at my schedule between homework, and I'm actually going to start teaching a class at DBU in the spring, and so I'm developing that, and I look at all this stuff that I have on my plate, I know how easy it is to say, but I'm serving the Lord with this. But I still want to patiently show up. I still want to invest well. And so that means that I'm really, really particular about my time. And I want to make sure that people know I may be busy, but you're my priority. And so my hope is that as we walk through these 4 parts of college ministry in a COVID world, that this is encouraging and ultimately just helps you think through, how do we refocus? How do we re-engage? How do we strategize? What does this look like? What do we need to adjust? What does obedience look like? And how do we best take the gospel into our communities? If you have any questions or would love to talk about specifically some of the trainings and things that we do at the BSM, please let me know. I would love for us to send, whether it be some students or staff members, to come and do a training for you as well. So any way that we can serve you and walk alongside you and encourage you, please let us know.